Working as an overnight stalker in Chicago can be a double-edged sword, because while work kept me away from the streets, even just driving around at night can be dangerous in the city. I learned from a very young age to always keep my head on a swivel, and that might be the only reason that I'm still alive today. Probably the worst day on the job was actually when I was working the night shift. Now, the grocery store that I worked at wasn't too big, so we only had like 2 or 3 employees working at the time. One night, I was outside taking a smoke break, and I noticed an extra car sitting in the parking lot. I thought that was pretty weird, so I finished my cigarette and I just sort of sat there staring at the car, trying to figure out whose it was. However, I realized I made a mistake when I saw the passenger side door open up and someone stepped out from the car. Through the tinted windows, I couldn't even tell that anyone was inside of it, but whoever was in there definitely didn't like me staring. As soon as they stepped out of the car, they called out to me, "Hey man, what are you looking at?" I knew that I didn't want any problems with this guy, especially when the other 3 car doors opened up and his friends popped out of each one. At that moment, I figured that I should wrap up my smoke break, so I put my cigarette out and started walking back to the store. That was when I heard, "Hey man, I'm talking to you." I ignored them again though as I kept walking to the front door of the building, but they kept trying to get my attention. They yelled out for me to come over there, which caused me to look back over my shoulder because they sounded like they were getting closer to me. When I realized that they were, I started to run as fast as I could into the store, and as soon as I was inside, I closed the door and locked it. I don't know what these guys were on, but I could tell that they were out for blood because even a locked door didn't hold them back for long. I stepped away from the door as they approached it and started slamming their hands up against it. I yelled back at them to go away before I called the cops, but that didn't scare them at all. Instead, it seemed to make them even more upset as the one who had stepped out of the car first pulled a gun out. I didn't even wait for him to point it before I took off running toward the back of the store. I yelled as loud as I could for the other overnight stalker to hide and yelled out that they had a gun. We both ran into the back room and closed the door behind us as we heard the sound of glass shattering at the front of the store. I started locking the door and pushing the desk up against it as I told the other employee to call the police. But by the time the operator picked up the phone, they were already at the door. My heart started to beat faster each time they pounded on the door. At one point they started to kick the door, and I really thought that they were about to get it open, but thankfully the desk held it in place. My coworker and I both tucked ourselves into the corner away from the door, and I'm thankful we did, because when all else failed, at least one of the guys that were trying to attack us began firing his gun at the door. The bullets ended up tearing through the wood, but the desk was still preventing them from opening the door. It was only about 2 minutes before we could hear the sound of sirens in the parking lot, which caused our attacker to make a run for it. They ended up making it out of the back door and started running through the nearby parking lots, but eventually, they were all picked up by police. That ended up being my last time working the night shift, and I'm pretty sure my coworker ended up quitting as well. We just didn't feel safe at that location anymore and needed to get a job somewhere else, preferably one with daylight hours. I used to love going to the store at night because the aisles were always so empty and I never have to worry about running into anyone that I knew. That all changed when I had to get some things one night when I was on my way home from work. I had never felt unsafe in my local grocery store ever in my life until that night. I was already feeling pretty uncomfortable because while I was at work that day, I ended up spilling coffee on my work pants, and the only spare clothes that I had in my car was a dress that I had just gotten cleaned. But I figured it wasn't a big deal, I would just finish work and then head home. The real issue came when I realized that I needed to get a few things from the store. I didn't think it would be too bad because I always went to that store, but as soon as I stepped out of my car, I wish I hadn't gone there. I closed my car door, and from behind me near one of the other 3 cars in the entire parking lot, I heard a man call out. I couldn't quite make out what he said, so I assumed that he was talking to someone else. That was when he yelled out again, only this time I heard, "Oh, so you're just going to ignore me?" And that's exactly what I tried to do. I tried my best to ignore the obnoxious man and continue to walk to the store. Honestly though, I wish I had just stayed in my car. I made it to the store without any other incident, but as I was walking down the few aisles that I needed to go down, I started to notice that there seemed to be someone following me. I tried my best to look casual as I turned over my shoulder and looked down the aisle behind me, and as soon as I did, I noticed someone turn and walk around the corner in the other direction. I knew that something was wrong, but I tried to just ignore it and continued shopping. But again, as I walked down the freezer aisle, I felt like I was being followed, and when I turned around, that same person was there, only this time, he was just staring at me. I turned back toward my cart and began pushing it down the aisle and decided that I was going to finish my grocery shopping for now and head home. I brought my cart to the checkout line and apologized to the cashier as I explained that I wasn't going to be buying any of the items. I told him that I really needed to get home, and when he asked if something was wrong, I decided to be honest with him. I told him that I didn't want to cause any issues, but I feel like a man in the store is following me around and I just want to go home. I felt a bit rude, but I didn't even wait for him to respond before quickly walking out toward my car. I couldn't stand being in the store for another second. I quickly walked through the parking lot to my car when, out of nowhere, I felt someone grab onto me from the side. I screamed as I turned and saw the man who had been yelling from his car, holding on to me and pulling me toward his parking spot. I looked around for anyone who might be able to help as I tried to fight him off, and thankfully the store clerk that I had spoken to before had shut his register down and decided to walk me out just in case anything happened. I kicked and screamed as I saw the store clerk rush over and pull me away from the man. The guy who attacked me didn't waste any time getting into his car and pulling out of the parking lot. The store associate apparently got his license plate down for the police, thankfully. Once we both were sure I was safe, we called the cops and the store clerk explained that as soon as I left the register, he noticed a man that was waiting near the exit go outside and walk around the corner as if they were waiting for me. The store associate looked out for my safety that day, and I'll never forget that. That being said, no more night trips alone to the store for me, never doing that again. I never thought that working overnight at a grocery store would turn into a nightmare. It was just supposed to be a simple job, but fate apparently had other plans for me. The night in question was dark and rainy, and the only thing I wanted was to get my work done so I could get back home. But little did I know that I was about to come face to face with terror. As I walked down the aisles, rearranging items from the shelves as we waited for the last shoppers to exit, I noticed something strange. There was a strange man who kept appearing out of nowhere, always looking over his shoulder as if he was being followed. I tried to ignore him and focus on my job, but the feeling of unease lingered in the back of my mind. Suddenly, I heard noises coming from outside the store. Shouts, screams, and the sound of sirens filled the air, causing me to peek out of the window and saw several police cars parked outside. I could see officers with their guns drawn, searching for someone. That's when I saw the man again, the same one who had been lurking around the store. He darted into the aisle that I had just walked out of, and he seemed to be trying to hide, which was when I realized he was trying to evade the police. I was frozen in fear as I looked back at the man who I figured was hiding from the police. I tried as casually as I could to make my way over to the officers and explain that he was in the store, but for some reason when they went looking for him, they couldn't find him at all. They went up and down all of the aisles and through the back of the store, but there was no sign of the person that they were looking for. Eventually, they stopped searching the store and went back to searching the parking lot. We closed up, and my coworkers and I started getting to work restocking the shelves. I grabbed my big cart and stocked it with products from the back room and started running them out to the front of the store. Every time I looked out the window, I noticed that the police were still there, and I even wondered if they might have found the guy yet, but I soon discovered firsthand that I was wrong. It was as I walked toward the back of the store to refill some of the freezers that I noticed something strange. I thought that I saw a pair of shoes sticking out from underneath one of the product displays. I decided to slowly walk over to it, and I was frozen in place as I looked past the products and saw a pair of eyes staring right back at me. The man who the police were looking for was standing right behind one of the movable display shelves. I turned and ran as fast as I could toward the front of the store, and I was horrified as I heard the sound of the man running out from behind the display. I was certain that he was chasing me to try to stop me from getting to the police, and in my panic, I ended up tripping and falling flat on my face. My heart raced as the footsteps behind me got closer and closer. I was surprised though when the man ran right past me. I looked up and saw him turn the corner at the end of the aisle, and I ran out to the police at the front of the store. I realized then that I didn't have to though, because one of the officers actually saw the man run out of the back entrance to the store and managed to arrest him before anyone got hurt. To this day, I can't look behind products on a shelf now without worrying that I'll see a pair of eyes staring back at me. Hands down, one of the scariest moments of my life.